TPR.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the TPR pod. Today's guest is Ariba Shahid. Among other things, Ariba is a journalist. She works at Profit PK. It is a magazine focusing on finance, business, economic stuff. And she also has a very popular Twitter account where, among other things, she talks about finance, business, economics, and other stuff. This episode, as you can imagine, her first on the show. So we're talking about how she became a journalist, how she joined Profit, how she found her voice, how they developed their voice, and some instances from here and there in her career, both on Twitter and at work. These include a award-winning article she wrote about Pakistani lawn fabric and its demand in India, how it gets there despite the border tensions between the two countries. Lotus biscuits versus Candi biscuits, the economics around that in Pakistan. And we also talk about this thread that we've been pulling. You might have noticed in the Uzair episode, the guy, Pakistani me boy, around the importance or lack of importance of facts and factual discourse in Pakistani mainstream news, informal, formal discussions and such, and how it happens, how it perpetuates, what can be done about it. She also has 2 Jinn Stories, sort of. So all in all, great episode. She has a really fun energy, and she, has a lot of knowledge about what she talks about as well. So always good to have someone like this on. Chapters below, links to her articles that we talk about below. But for now, without further ado, pod number 147 with Ariba Shahid. ठीक है चलो खैर. So you're from Karachi and you work at Profit. Is this the only place you have worked?
No. So I now work 2 jobs. I work at Profit Magazine and I also work at Jinn Street Asia, and I cover the Pakistani ecosystem for them. So at Profit, I cover the macro economy, and I cover other topics such as, commodities, exchange rates,
right.
The state bank primarily, right. And I cover the banking sector sometimes, and I cover whatever I want to write about. Like if I come up with the most stupidest stories, and I like how my boss was like, Kar lo yaar.
No, one of those stories I was very curious about, and how the stories come about is something I wanted to ask about. But how did you, because this is your first time here, hopefully of many, introductions zara banti hai कि how did Ariba Shahid become a journalist?
Okay,
was this always the plan?
No, I've done the story to death, but I never planned on being a journalist.
Okay.
A few of my friends, jo bachpan ke dost hai, sometimes we sit down and we talk, and they're like, "How did you come up to be a journalist? Like, you never remotely even mentioned that you wanted to do this." And I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't know I wanted to do this." So I was working at a job, working as an economic analyst at an independent research firm, and I was writing economic reports, and the reports were actually not in a very serious tone. Like, of course, the tone was serious, but catchy headlines, and it was a more readable way.
Yeah.
It wasn't like robotic.
Yeah, not dry.
And that went on. Yeah, and that went on, and I didn't like the place as much. All my friends had left at that point as well. So in the meanwhile, I saw this job position at Profit, and I was like, you know what? Let's apply. So I applied, and I went for an interview. I gave the interview, and I thought I sucked at the interview, and because I didn't hear back from them as well. But 2 months later, they messaged me saying that, we were sorting things out in our Karachi office, and things are now sorted out. Are you still interested in joining? And me being confused about whether I wanted to join or not, I didn't respond properly for around a month or less than a month. I'm not really sure. And then one day I was sitting with my mom, and my dad had gone for namaz, and it was just me and my mom. I was sitting and talking, and I'm just weighing the pros and cons. And my mom's like, Ariba, do you really want to be a journalist? Like, what's the future? What's the scope? And I'm like, Mama, what's the worst that can happen? I can give it a try. If it doesn't work out, I could always go back. And I was like, the reports I write, I really like writing them. And I feel that they're read by only a few people, like a few clients, right? What if my the things that I write would be read by, a larger audience. And that would be something I'd really enjoy, because I feel that, I don't know, maybe that should be my goal.
Okay.
And my mom goes, sure, you know what, beta, and this has always been the case at my place, where no one has shoved their opinions or their thoughts onto me. So in my family, no one had taken economics or O levels या A levels, and किसी ने business group नहीं लिया हुआ था, सब engineering करेंगे या doctor बनेंगे. And my mom really wanted me to be a doctor as well. Like, my family really insisted on it. By insisted, I mean they just said हमारा बहुत शौक है. That is all the insistence.
Right.
Yeah, but no one really ever forced me to do anything. So when I told my mom, I think I should give this a chance, her response was very basic, and it was like, if you think it's the right thing, go for it. Like, we've never told you what to do or what not to do, and we're not starting right now. And the independence I've had in terms of what I'm choosing to study, what I'm choosing to work as, that was the reason why I was able to do this. Because my mom's like, you know what, you're usually right about things, go for it. And when my dad came back, I told my dad, I'm doing this. He's like, okay. And the next day I call up my boss and I go like, yeah, I'm interested. And then we talk a bit. I try to understand what the workload's going to be like, what things are going to be like. And that is when I decided I'm going to do this. And I joined immediately. And that is why on my LinkedIn, I call myself an accidental journalist, because again, I accidentally became one. I never really planned on it. And I haven't studied journalism. The closest thing to being a journalist is मैंने अपने undergrad में, I think, I worked as the editor of a magazine. No, a gazette. A 3-day gazette.
Okay.
So that's the closest. So when I joined, I had zero idea about journalism.
When was this?
एक होता है headline. January 2020, right before COVID.
Oh, so not very long ago.
No.
But it's been 2 years, huh?
Yeah, it's been 2 years. So it's like this. When I joined, I didn't even know the headline के नीचे जो line होती है, जो story को somewhat summarize करती, I did not know that's called a shoulder. So one day my boss was like, add a good shoulder to it. I'm like, yes, the story needs more strength. I thought shoulder means add a backbone to the story.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, and he's like, the 2 lines are called shoulder. And I'm like, oh, अच्छा. हाँ, मुझे पता था, मैं ऐसे joke crack कर रही थी.
Yeah. So then,
पता था.
where does why were you good at writing? Or how did you get good?
So the stories that you see, they're widely edited.
No, I mean when you were at that analyst job, right? And you don't have journalistic experience before that, but the way you wrote your stories in that job.
I've always kind of been expressive with words. Even as a kid, I loved writing things. And you know how some people are quantitative and some are quantitative.
I think you said quantitative 4 times.
Some people are qualitative and some are quantitative.
Yeah.
I do think in numbers, and sometimes I think in memes, but I think I usually do think in numbers. But at the same time, I feel that as a kid, I was always able to write well. And the writing thing started as a kid, and it's continued over the years. And I think for us, the school वालों ने दिमाग थोड़ा खराब भी कर लिया. Oh, you write well, and then you start. So that happened. But I honestly, when I look at my writing right now, most of my work is edited, and I still feel inadequate in the sense that if it was so good, it shouldn't have been, edited.
Right.
So that's the thing. And plus I feel like my vocabulary is really subpar because I use very basic words and I don't use fancy words or creative words or adjectives. So those are things that I'm working on.
Okay. But then that is a bit of an artistic thing also, where every person with any creative streak I've spoken to, regardless of genre, no one's ever yeah, bro, mera good scene hai. I'm really good at my thing. So I mean,
I'm not being humble. I'm not being humble. I'm just telling
sincerely.
you how it is. Sincerely, when I write something, I'm just gonna. So it's like this. When I'm gonna write something, I'm going the sun is a bright star, right?
Yeah.
And my editor Abdullah is gonna turn it into the sun the source of all energy in the solar system is the brightest of bright stars
Wow.
that
Okay.
illuminates
Oh God.
and gives life to you and me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
that is the difference between a polite. He's a literature major, just by the way.
Right. Right. Well, that tracks
Yeah.
then. Acha, so then you show
Yeah.
up at Profit.
Yeah.
And first time journalist, long time reader, first time writer. How does that go for you? Did you like adjust for and say find your footing?
No, no. It was terrible during the first few months because I didn't know what to do. I had absolutely no clue कि क्या करना होता है, क्या नहीं करना होता. And my bosses weren't in Karachi. So it was even worse because at that time we had two bosses. One was Farooq Tirmizi, he was based in Washington, and the other was Babar Nizami, and he's based in Lahore. And I mean, they would tell me what to do, but like it just took me a little while. It took me a little while, and then COVID hit. So right before lockdown, I had settled in.
Right.
And that's when lockdown started, and things went crazy. But it took me like around a month or two to like settle in. I think my first story came out a month and a half-ish, or a month after I joined.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not that long considering, in your 2-year span. That's like within a month getting down with a completely new job. But it's not that completely new considering you did have some writing exposure in your previous one.
It's just, when you're new, you just go like, oh, I haven't done anything.
Yeah,
Why are they paying me?
Yeah. Especially when there is measurable output.
A pandemic.
And also,
and measurable output. Like everyone is supposed to file at that point. Everyone is supposed to file at least a story every 1 week or every 2 weeks, right? And I couldn't manage to figure that out for the longest time, and it just felt a little weird because it wasn't more about the quality as well as also about the quantity. So there were two things that I had to work on. I had to work on the quantity and the quality.
Right.
And then plus, the first time you submit an article for review is kind of the toughest because you are really conscious that time. Over time, wo conscious level khatam ho jata hai, and then you're really comfortable even submitting things that you don't like yourself.
Okay.
Just getting done with the deadline.
Yeah. What I was wondering was, finding a story to submit, how I decided after seeing you on Qazi and Muzammil show and everything, and also all over my Twitter. I was like, bro, mujhe bhi baat karni hai Ariba se, because there's this thing where I saw that you got the Agahi Award. We'll come to that maybe. And I thought, kyun? Kis cheez ke liye mila? And then there was the article about Pakistani Lawn getting into India. I was like, how do you get to this idea? Like, ye baat kahan se aayi ke? How do you find a story?
No, okay. So this is actually interesting. I didn't find the story.
Okay.
And I didn't scoop. It's not my scoop. The story is basically the story. Some people reached out to tell me what was happening in India and how they wanted Pakistani Lawn. And they didn't reach out to me. They reached out to my colleague Babar Khanzada. And they reached out to him. Yeah, and Babar was like, Ariba, I think this would be fun for you, or this is up your alley. And I remember Babar emailed it to me. And I usually emails ka jawab nahi deti hu.
Great.
Because I don't know, I just think I will, and then I don't.
Sure.
Yeah, and then Babar goes like, Ariba, I think this is interesting. And I respond to Babar. I was like, yeah, I'm interested. Then I get in touch with the source, and then later on we find out more sources, and then we find out more interviews, and then that's how the story came into being. So Babar Khan Javed was the person that basically gave me the story and then started writing it. Yeah, so Babar Khan Javed, shout out to him.
Yeah.
But the story basically, when I started writing it, then I was like, oh my god, lawn, like Banta Pakistan mein, cotton India ka hai, suit unko pasand aata hai, and it's very beautiful. I'll tell you why the story was really close to home as well. My dad's born in India. He migrated, like he's seen India. My whole family's from India as well, and it's actually pretty like there's so much in common. There's so much of their culture that we still adopt at home. There's so much of things that we do that is very similar. And the very fact that these two countries have been at war
Mm.
is very sad. Because the first thing that you look for is friendly neighbors, and if you don't have that, that's sad. And of course, trade is really important as well, especially when you've got such a strategic neighbor as well. So the story then took a turn because if you read it, it feels like someone's writing from the heart, And then plus when my editor Farooq Timizi, he edited the story. Again, Timizi himself, an Urdu-speaking Mahajir family, right? He also feels the India wala way, like I'm not saying that we feel like we're Indians, but you just feel like, oh, I come from there.
Yeah.
My family's from there.
Yeah.
Oh, if I come from there, they're not as different as me as the border makes it seem. Because, if I wouldn't have moved, I'd still be the same person.
Yeah.
Malab,
Perhaps.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I
I'm
get
trying
what
to
you're
say,
saying.
yeah, so those factors do come into play as well. So the whole ode became even more there. And then I just felt that the story was really, well, when I wrote the story, I even remember I messaged Babar Nizami, this managing editor, right? I messaged him and I go like, why is this the cover story? Because I didn't really put in a lot of work into it. I put in work into it. I just felt that I didn't think it was that important. Like when I wrote it, I just thought it'd be like, oh, good. I was like, oh, story. Yeah. I didn't think it'd be that important. But Timizi really liked it and put it on the cover because he likes trade topics as well.
Right.
And he likes trade with India as well. So he made it the cover story. So I specifically remember I asked Babar Saab and I was like, why? And he's like,
But then
so that happened. But yeah, the story, I didn't look for the story. And most of the time, to be very honest, a lot of stories, we don't really look for them ourselves unless like kabhi kabhar khud like inspiration aa jati hai. But most of the time, the stories are sources or tips that we get, or someone says, oh, you should write about this, or oh, I have really nice information, you shouldn't read into this. So most of the times the stories that we do come out with and
yeah.
the stories that I do come out with are
Yeah.
also like based on that. And
So
sometimes it's just like me thinking about random things like, oh, Lotus or Candi biscuit taste the same. Why isn't Candi biscuit as famous as Lotus?
yeah.
Things
Yeah.
like
I
that.
haven't read any work you've done on this. Why is this? I'm gonna stop all this discussion now. Why are they not as famous? Because when I left Pakistan in
Yeah.
2010, the
Yeah.
Lotus craze was non-existent.
Insane. Oh,
उस
it's
वक्त नहीं था.
insane. Like, उसमें Nutella था.
Perhaps उस वक्त Nutella आने ही वाला था. Candy
Wait,
biscuit was
2010?
yeah. I left like in December
Yeah,
2010.
Nutella wasn't a thing then. Nutella became a thing in 2014ish.
Yeah, and then like research होने लगी कि अच्छा Turkey से hazelnuts आते हैं. Turkey में बड़ा monopoly है hazelnuts की Nutella. I was like, this is way too much. But khair. So when I come back to Pakistan, like over the past 3-4 years, everything has Lotus in it. And मैं jahil, I was like, oh, the flour, maybe they're using is the fucking biscuit. And I was like, oh, acha. All right. Why? How do you know how this happened or / why?
Yeah, I so the thing is that Lotus biscuits and their flavors started coming in. So people started eating Lotus biscuits.
Mm.
And it became a whole thing. I think an Instagram blogger started it.
Yeah.
And it became a whole thing that people started eating Lotus a lot. And बहुत आ गया था पाकिस्तान में इम्तियाज में हर जगह मिलने लग गए थे. People started eating them a lot. And this is back when the dollar wasn't as expensive as it is now. So, putting that out there.
Yeah.
So jo Biscoff spread tha na, Lotus ka, that was also pretty cheap, right? And these desserts had become famous around the world. And the taste is really nice and creamy. It's a very different taste. And unlike Nutella, because Nutella would feel really heavy, Lotus was a little lighter. It feel good. So people started mixing it with a lot of desserts. One day I went out and I was having dessert and everything there was like, oh, Lotus ice cream, Lotus French toast,
cheesecake.
Lotus waffle, Lotus cheesecake.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what is this Lotusization?
Yeah.
and then I think to myself, and I go like, Lotus biscuit is practically candy biscuit. Like,
Yeah.
of course, it's not the same thing, but like I would say that they're 85 to 90% same. And I go like, yaar, हमने ये क्यों नहीं किया? Why didn't we candyize the whole like menu? Why is it Lotus? Like, or this time that I'm thinking is like when the dollar starts getting expensive and import substitution shuru hua. And I'm like,
Right.
and at this point, Lotus spread had become really expensive all over Pakistan, and shortage bhi ho gayi thi because demand bahut tha, supply kam thi, and dollars ki wajah se the price has also gone up. So at that point, I go like, you know what? I think candy biscuit lost out on a chance. And that is the inspiration for the article.
Yeah. Like, I wonder because with Lotus, I suppose.
And to try this theory out, what I did is I made biscuit spread using candy biscuit at home.
Yeah.
And I made a Lotus cake.
Okay.
Using the spread.
How different was it?
Yeah, मुझे sugar नहीं डालना पड़ा.
Okay, candy is sweeter.
Candy has sugar in it, right?
Yeah.
Candy has sugar in it, and it's a little coarser.
Yeah.
So it took a little more time in the chopper than Lotus would, but that's the only difference, right? And it was really easy to make. I made the spread at home. I made the cake at home, and my mom was like, "Wow."
Yeah.
But that is my evil. Like that's my villain story. So I then go on to write the story, and I also remember this, and this is the funny bit. So while writing the story, I wanted to talk to people. So I talked to a few bakers that use candy. All right, so people that use candy, that was important. And also I spoke to a friend of mine, Amar, rogue economist on Twitter. Pretty sure you follow him as well. Spoke to him because one, he's an economist. Two, he runs Karachi Food Diaries. So,
Oh, he runs Karachi Food Diaries.
He's I don't know the details, but like he's there.
He's on the board.
And I'm like, dude, this guy knows food too, right? And I've spoken to him about food. And I messaged him and I was like, hi, Amar, I have a few questions about this. And I messaged him and he answers my question. He gives me a beautiful quote. He goes like, brands need to start thinking outside the wrapper. And why can't I get a churran chutney dessert? It's a beautiful quote, right? Achha, and in order to troll around with people, what I do is I tweet writing a super serious article about a super serious issue with a super serious quote by rogue economists, right? And then people start asking me, are you writing about LNG? Are you writing about energy? Are you writing about policy? And they're asking like crazy questions, like, like super serious. And then 3 days later, an article comes out about Lotus and candy.
This is the thing with Prophet Vese, or maybe why I gravitate towards them, because even though I'm like an auditor by profession, I don't want to read about it, or accounting or finance and stuff. Like, I don't find it enjoyable as a thing, right? But Prophet has this tone, which is like, seems like it's like consciously not serious. Like, it is written to be approachable in the sense, like not serious as in not like dry,
Yeah. Again, it doesn't read like a report, and the reason why is because the team is really young. And I think I'll give you an example. Abdullah is younger than me.
Okay.
Then there's me. Then there's Mariam T and Mariam Abhay. I don't know. But there's Temur. He's a little older than me.
And if we're using you as like a basis, you're like mid-20s.
I just turned 26. So we're like between, let's just say, and then now we've got new hires. So let's just say that the average age is 25, 26. Because the youngest is probably 22, 23-ish, and the eldest is probably 31-ish. I'm not sure. Okay. So this is I'm not magazine team specifically. Right. The exception is Shahab Umar, who I don't know. I don't want to talk about him. Yeah, I'm assuming he's older than us. But the magazine team is pretty young. And then plus, we like generally as well, like when Prophet started off as well. So we had Babar and Timizi, and they're both really young, like mentally. So they're cool.
Right. Okay.
And they're
not
not old. And they're
yeah,
not
yeah,
old.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
not old. But they're cool. Like we send each other gifs and memes and stickers sometimes.
They get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're cool people. So
Hmm.
that is why, like, from the get-go, the magazine has been pretty cool in that sense. But yeah, again, when we write stuff, we try to make it as understandable as possible, so that even, like, let's say a 5-year-old, like, the base case is my mom, or someone who doesn't know anything about it, reads it, they get something from it. And
Right.
that is the thing that we set out to do. So it's not like, oh, I know everything and I'm here to tell you everything. It's like, oh, hey, let's talk about this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But then this is sort of like my thing also, where you're very online and you're on Twitter and you tweet a lot. And like, I'm saying this as if it's like a condemnation, like you tweet way too much. But I mean, you're on Twitter, you're pretty active. And, the language you use, there are other finance business people on Twitter as well. And वही वाली
Yeah.
बात है ना कि they are not using, like the references and the memes and the gifs. वो उस approach में आ ही नहीं रहा है. Is this, do you think, like, everyone's young, sure, but if you tell young people to write like old people, they'll do it. So is this like a
Yeah.
conscious thing then as well at Profit कि हमें approachable रखना है?
No, so the thing is that no one stops us from being who we are.
Okay.
So there have been lots of times when I've tweeted things that have probably got my bosses in trouble. With, like, sometimes an ad sponsor calls up and goes like, "Oh, she tweeted this." I'm like, we're not in charge of what she tweets or what she doesn't tweet. So no
अच्छा, ऐसा
one
भी होता है?
patrols my social. Obviously, like, corporate Pakistan hai. If I tweet against the corporation, they may call my boss and go like, "Oh, why is she saying this?" And they'll be like, "We don't patrol anyone's streets," and that's pretty good. They give us a lot of independence. And Profit does give a lot of independence. And yeah, you're right. A lot of business journalists are out there, and they don't really use, like, they don't. I mean, like, for instance, if I were to say something and I could say it in a meme, I would probably just say it in a meme than to write it. And that is basically my personality. There are lots of people on our team that do not do the same, and that is their personality. But I also feel that the reason why I do this is because I was on Twitter before I was a journalist.
Sure.
And my Twitter handle was really embarrassing. It was Ariba. And
oh, I remember Ariba. Okay. Right. Okay.
and then my name was Beza Ariba. So
Very on brand for that period of time. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was on Twitter, and I'd already been, like, I would already talk about the economy from time to time.
Sure.
But I would just shitpost most of the time, right? And when I became a journalist, it became really difficult for me to, like, continue at it. I mean, it just, I didn't understand. So for a while, I was like, oh, do I have to be 100% serious? Or do I have to be like someone who has a stick shoved up? Or do I have to be someone who is me? And after a while, I realized that, you know what, the reason why people probably like me, I'm not sure if they do, is because I am me.
Yeah.
So I continued with it. And I feel that in this day and age, if you connect with people, that is the biggest asset that you can have. And the fact that I was able to connect with people who were my age, who were a little older than me, who were younger than me, and I connected with them all, because we have really boring lives, like, all of us, like, at work, we have really boring lives. Like, you've got a job as an auditor, it's really boring, right? I work as a financial journalist, and I meet really boring people every day.
Right.
But, at the end of the day, everyone likes a good laugh, as long as you're not getting personal. And, if you could say something in a lighthearted way, why not? So I continue doing it. But, like, again, Profit does not control my social media.
Okay. I feel like that's also not very common. Like, speaking to Babar, I got the same idea that chill scene at Profit. There are, like, some, living in Pakistan, there's, like, some people you don't poke. But then apart from that, generally, there is a pretty...
It's pretty good. Like, you can pitch your own stories. Sometimes there have been moments when I've pitched stories and my editors may or may not agree with the story or the thesis statement or the premise. I've pushed back and I've got support. And it's a really nice place to work. Like
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely enjoy my time there, and that is one reason why I've stuck around, because I like the place,
Right.
and I like the freedom that it gives me.
Mm. One thing I was talking to, Uzair of Pakistani, he does the podcast.
Yes.
He had this thing which we don't usually talk to news slash journalist types on the show, nor do we talk about finances, business stuff. But because we talk about internet stuff, those borders are like sort of overlapping now.
Yeah.
He said that he started the podcast, and like everyone who started a podcast has done so because of like some lack of information they felt in the
Yeah.
in society or something. So for Uzair, he was like he felt that the literacy level when it comes to discourse around economics or
Yeah.
whatever was not very
It's very
high.
political.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's very politically driven. It's not fact driven.
yeah. So while you are writing your pieces for profit, and that's like a formal, this is a magazine and we're talking about news shit over here, so this is like a factual thing. On Twitter also, you're talking, a lot of people are on Twitter in Pakistan, and I'm trying to follow this thread about why, like, is the information being put out on Twitter being received by the Awam? Because this doesn't really apply
I
to you directly.
I
uh
don't think so. I don't I don't think so. Like
I love
I'll
it.
give you the
Yeah.
answer. I don't think so, because if you think about it, um the smart people on Twitter mostly interact with each other.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, it's a circle. It's Think about it this way. Twitter is high school,
Mm.
all right? And where some people are the jocks, some people are the finance kids.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's like that. The finance kids sometimes talk to the student body election wale log, and they talk like aapas mein. But we go to a very high end high school, just by the way. Like our high school is really high end, and that just kind of defeats the whole purpose. But like Twitter is a bubble. The
Yeah.
real world is outside of it.
Yeah.
And I don't really think that the information that we spread on Twitter is as accurate, because what I see is WhatsApp पे वो fake news ही forward होती है, लेकिन आपकी काम की thread कभी forward नहीं हो रही
No,
होती है.
not at all.
So that is why I feel like it's a nice Twitter's not for the masses. Twitter is
Mm.
for to make you. Twitter is to get you in the niche.
Right. Right. See, but
So
then
it's not to get you available to the masses. You do reach out to more people this way, and
yeah.
there are people for the masses. I'm not saying that you're not. I'm just saying that, like, if I even consider myself, how many times do I respond to a normal person? Very
Normal
rarely.
person, yeah.
But when I say a normal person,
Yeah.
when I say a normal person, I mean someone who I don't know what they do.
Sure.
I don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
And they ask me a question. And my first response is, yeah, मुझे free करवाना है या नहीं करवाना. Say it. And that is the problem.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, the thing is, this makes sense. And this has always been this way because Twitter is a very effort heavy social media platform, right? On Facebook, you just have so many people who in real life, over connection se connection bante jate hain. Instagram,
Yeah.
you're following people, there doesn't really have to be any interaction between you two. Twitter is like only on the basis of your like thoughts, right? You have to prove to somebody that you are worth following based on your mental output, and so therefore it's just like people find it less approachable than the other social medias.
Yeah, I also feel that some people want to sound smarter than they are on Twitter, and they try
वो
to.
तो फिर जाहिर है ना, वो तो फिर जाहिर है. Like
Yeah,
Instagram पे
Instagram पे you try to look fancier than you are, which is okay as well. I'm not judging you. But the very fact that sometimes when you try to sound smarter than you are, or you try to come up from, upar se aane wala approach, like, that makes you kind of inaccessible as well.
Yes.
So yeah, like,
which is also
when
perhaps
people
what
use
people
big fancy
want.
words.
I think some people would also want to be inaccessible.
I also feel like, the financial literacy in the country, the reason why it's so low is that it suits the agenda of the people in power. Like, the more people are unaware of things, the better.
Yeah.
The more I can go like, 4% GDP is bad. And people be like, she says it's bad. Let me believe her. The
Yeah.
better. Like the more gullible they are, the better. And that is one reason why financial literacy हमारे मुल्क में बहुत कम है.
Yeah.
I
But
feel.
then, if all these things are true, which they are, why is there? My main maqsad in this is why are there so many political types of Pakistan on Twitter being so active on Twitter if Pakistan ki awam is not on Twitter? Like, who is this?
For the niche.
Yeah, but like niche में तो 5 लोग हैं ना, मतलब like niche
It's
ने क्या
for the
करना?
niche. It's for the niche because the niche is the one that is the influential bit.
Are they तो मतलब?
In the sense that everyone wants to be the niche.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why, but also, like, for instance, these politicians are on Twitter because it's an easy mode to make things public and
Sure.
make announcements, things
Sure.
like that. So if we put them aside, let's talk about people who, like, let's talk about the social media wings of these political parties.
Yeah, because my thing is the fake trends. Like, who is that for?
That is for the people that no one listens to on social media but are impressionable on social media.
Okay.
I mean, think about it this way. Your parents, let's say, your parents, my parents, anyone's parents are on social media, and they see a trend saying something.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Tumhe nahi pata ye trend challenge is a very big thing."
Yeah. But is that really what, like, have we like been on Twitter so long कि हमें पता चल गया है कि this is bullshit, and there's still so many people who are falling for it?
Now we can tell, like, I don't know, like I can look at a few tweets and I can tell when a tweet is paid or when a tweet is not.
Yeah.
I can tell when someone is on a payroll. And you know, as a journalist as well, you can actually tell like when someone is on a payroll.
Sure.
It becomes a little apparent.
Yeah.
So things like that do tend to pop up, but then also we're from the generation that's different, and plus we're so social media savvy that we can tell at this point. Like Instagram pe chahe jitne, it's not just Twitter, like Instagram pe jitna bhi wo blogger bole, this is not a paid collaboration, you can tell it's a paid collaboration because the product sucks.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's you know, in genuine fakeness pata chal jati hai. I can't say it. Ingenuity.
Ingenuity?
I can't say it. I don't know. Yes, that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, I'll insert it in a voiceover. Like, Ariba ki voice changed in that one word. But acha, so then okay, because my thing was clearly trends, ye paid trends are hum social media cheeton ke liye to ye they're obviously fake, but you know, so they're aiming
not for you and me.
No, so they're aiming for gullible people. But I'm like, are there that many people in Pakistan on Twitter? Because like it seems to me like so much effort from people I would not name in a podcast, but like तुम लोग bro पैसे लगा रहे हो इसके लिए and कुछ result आ रहा है, like
they are creating employment.
Sure, yeah.
लोगों की रोजी रोटी इससे चलती है.
Yeah.
So stop being a hater.
I'm being elitist. It is as once again exposed.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but Rosie Roti.
Let's cut that out.
No, that's the trailer.
So like mazak se hat ke, the discourse on Twitter is not for you and me, but the trends, they're for, you know, the rest of the people. The discourse on Twitter is for you and me, the trends are for the rest of the people.
Yeah. I wonder, because it's like maybe I just don't appreciate how many people in Pakistan are on Twitter, right? Because मुझे तो ये लगता है कि Twitter की penetration ही कुछ नहीं है. Facebook पे चलाओ.
No, it is very low. Like if, for instance, if we're talking about Twitter, like in my family, the number of people that use Twitter actively is way less.
Yeah.
Like people log in, they look at the news and they leave. Like they don't really use it. My friends, like when I say friends, I mean school friends, and not my Twitter friends, who have now like I've lost the lines between Twitter friends and normal friends.
Yeah.
But my school friends, my friends I grew up with, not really on Twitter either. So, so you're right. There are very few people on Twitter, but then again, like I feel that some professions actually require you to be on Twitter a lot.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you're working in economics, you would find yourself on Twitter, regardless of whether आप tweet करो ना करो. If you work in the financial industry, you'd find yourself on Twitter because all the news breaks there most of the
Hmm.
time.
Hmm.
And if it doesn't break there, it's there first. So
Yeah.
इधर में एक बंदा आर्टिकल लिख के लगाएगा उससे पहले ट्विटर के ऊपर आया हुआ होता है
Yeah, for
and
sure.
why this is also really important to see because Twitter is getting media competition as well. So Twitter is now not just seen as a social media platform in Pakistan, but it's also seen as a news outlet in a
Hmm.
way.
Hmm.
So that is another reason why I'm assuming people do spend a lot because if even if people don't use it, they just see it as a news outlet. So advertisement करने के लिए maybe Twitter would not be an ideal space, but to disseminate information or fake information or whatever information, Twitter would be a good place to go.
Speaking of being on Twitter and news coming out first, there was this one thing that Ariba Shahid did, जिससे तहलका मच गया था, where she was live tweeting as like a state bank something event or something, और लोग आवाम पागल हो गए कि bro ये क्या कर दिया इसने, this is so amazing, impressive. I was like, Uncle Twitter was like, beta, very impressive. I was like,
Twitter went crazy. Uncle Twitter went crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
I kid you not. I kid you not. Like I had been able to penetrate up to like 40-ish uncles.
Yeah.
Like for age 40-ish uncles, right? I went full uncle that day.
Yeah. SpaceX कर दिया तुमने.
Yeah.
What was the thing?
I'll tell you what the
event?
thing was. It was TRG. का वो था. It was an extraordinary general meeting where they were voting for the new board of directors so that whether Zia would stay a director or Zia would not stay a director. This is the same Zia, just the few allegations lagi hai. So it's really funny. I walk into the EOGM and I'm wearing sunglasses indoors.
Right.
And
they
a
already
mask
know.
so that no one they don't recognize. So I wasn't allowed to be there because I asked if the media could attend. And they're like, no. And then I'm like, oh, can I get someone's proxy? They're like, no, it's too late. And I'm like, oh, I don't have TRG shares. So again, that does not mean that you should not buy it or buy it. I don't, disclaimer.
Flashing light. I'll put like flashing signs in this.
but what I'm saying is that I was like, oh, ये तो bad scene हो गया, लेकिन मुझे तो जाना है. So I show up there and I'm wearing like sunglasses and a mask indoors like an idiot for the first 10 minutes. And then I message a friend and I go like, yaar, मैं sunglasses उतार लूं, थोड़ा over हो रहा है. And he's like, why are you still wearing them? I was like, so people don't recognize me. And I was like, I didn't want, it's not people recognizing me. I'm not famous. I know I'm not.
Okay.
This is the man who said, aap nahi aa sakti. I didn't want him to recognize me. And but then again, मैं ladies हूँ ना, तो मुझे कोई निकालेगा तो नहीं ना.
I was wondering. Yeah.
मैं ladies हूँ ना, तो खैर उसके बाद क्या हुआ कि I took my sunglasses off and I sat down. I kept my mask on though, and I also I genuinely as well. I usually do keep my mask on, so that was me being safe. And while I'm there, a friend just was like, "What's happening? Has it started?" And I was like, "No, it's about to begin." And it's like, "Yeah, okay." And then I think someone told me to live tweet. And I just started like tweeting like randomly, like what's happening. And then me being me, I would joke about stuff as well. Like, everyone was fighting and then Joe, the Steven guy, the Gora there. वो बैठ के नाश्ता खा रहा है. And I'm just like, आग लगी बस्ती में. Steven नाश्ता खा रहा है. So I don't know. So me being me, I just cracked a lot of jokes. And again, I was there for like 4-5 hours-ish, and I was really hungry as well. So, when you're hungry and when you're bored, the troll within you comes out.
Yeah.
And the troll within me did come out. And when I started that, I did not think it would have been as big. I did not think it would be big at all. I thought like, maximum 20-25 log would be like, oh, this is cool or whatever. But again, TRG is a share that a lot of people are really interested in. Like the number of people that have invested in TRG is significant. The free float right now, the free float at that time was like 90%. So that gives you an amount, like, a general estimate कि like कितनी public interest है उस company में. And जब से Zia is no longer a director, the free float turned into 100. I don't know what it is right now. But things like this were really interesting to a lot of people because आम बंदा भी TRG में invested था.
Yeah, sure.
And uncle WhatsApp groups went crazy that day. Because the stock market is primarily run by uncles.
Yep.
So yeah. But it was funny. And then the funniest part, the absolutely funniest part was throughout the thread, beach mein, I post a selfie of myself and I'm wearing a mask and I post a selfie of myself.
Oh.
My selfie had more likes than the thread. And I'm like, Jim, yaar. मैंने कोई काम की बात नहीं की है. Why?
वो picture worth 1,000 words. But I was wondering, selfie वाली बात तो एकदम से end तक ले आई. Was there ever a risk of you being discovered?
So no. So meanwhile, like while the voting was going on and while we're waiting, by that point my thread had gone viral.
Yeah.
And I'm like, shit, man, कोई uncle आएंगे मुझे बोलेंगे बेटा आप निकल जाओ यहाँ से. Because not only were you not allowed to be here,
yeah,
but you're live tweeting it.
Yeah.
And you're making fun of all of us. Like, क्या हो रहा है?
Uncles famously don't have great sense of humors. So
yeah. So then what happened is, in fact, so a guy walks up to me. He's not an uncle. A guy walks up to me, Hasnan, right? This CEO right now, I think. He walks up to me. He was like, your thread is going quite viral. And I'm like, yes. And this is literally, yes. I don't know what to say. And he was like, yeah, hum stage pe baith ke na, we were looking at the thread.
Oh, they were.
They were.
Wow.
And they knew it was
Zabardast.
They knew it was me. And then the worst part is that later on, another director messaged me, your thread is getting quite the attention. I'm like, yes. And then the guy that told me that I was not allowed to come, he also said, your thread is being read by a lot of people. And I'm like, yes. I'm like, please don't kick me out.
He said it to you like in person?
हाँ, yeah.
Oh, अच्छा. तो मतलब तुम मिल गई थी उनको?
सबसे मिल लिया मैंने. And it's so weird. It's so weird because like I've never been the type of person that, I've never been the type of person who takes random pictures of people. And I was there and I was trying to take pictures of Zia, and वो मेरे बिल्कुल मुंह के सामने ऐसा है, and I'm like, I just felt so invasive at the time.
Yeah.
But you gotta do what you gotta do.
I mean, freedom of press इसलिए जरूरी है, so that मजबूरी में ऐसे ना करना पड़े लोगों को. Do you think you'll be invited next time? Yeah, अगली दफा you'll be coming through an event or something.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that एक और EOGM होने वाली थी, and someone sent me an invite. Please do join.
Oh.
But that wasn't really interesting, so I didn't join.
अच्छा. मतलब they're like marketing opportunity मिल गई है हमें.
हाँ, ऐसा थोड़ी ना, मतलब ऐसा थोड़ी ना चल रहा है.
Yeah.
Like, speaking of marketing opportunities and like me attending EOGMs, like there's another thing that I started to do, and I started to go to like, I went to an LNG terminal, I went to a refinery, and then people are like, is this like your new thing where Ariba goes to these cool places and then writes a Twitter thread about it? And I'm like, I hope so. It's a really fun life. Yeah.
I mean, I saw the one where you also have a picture on this on your Instagram on this in the full safety hulia.
Yeah. And if you watch the video, you'll find out that the safety hulia had pockets which had dogs in them, like they had cartoon dogs.
Oh, acha. I was like, that's a really small dog. Jeeb mein aake. Acha, chalo, theek hai.
So the cartoon dog, like when we were changing into them, I'm like, oh my god, you guys have dogs inside. This is like so cute. And they're like, we had never noticed. And I'm like, yeah.
As journalist ki nazar, someone's gonna say some shit like this.
Saari bande ki nazar.
Acha, one thing that is also a meme with regards to you is the stock exchange rally does not mean economy achhi ho rahi hai. Where does that come from?
Can I just say, at this point, it has become such an integral part of my personality, not by choice.
Yeah.
It's just that everyone kind of associates it with me.
It's
To
also
the
in your
extent
bio
that-
somewhere.
No, I took it out because of bio mein jagah nahi hai.
Oh, right.
It was in my bio. Because someone
Okay.
told me, hey, you say it, itna zyada put it in your bio. And I'm like, done.
Yeah. Okay.
But it was in my bio. Ab jagah nahi hai bio mein, so I had to remove it. But it started off, I think I'll tell you why it started. When the stock market would go down, the opposition would go like, oh, economy doob rahi hai. When the stock market would go up, the government would say, oh, market uth rahi hai, and economy uth rahi hai. And it turned into a whole thing. And a day of good or bad trading is not like an indicator of how good or bad the economy is. It could be an indicator of how good or bad people think it is, or how bad it can be later on, or whatever. But there have been countless instances where the economy is doing really great and the stock market's been subpar, or when the stock market's been doing really great and the economy's been like there's so many examples of this. And also at the same time, the number of investors that we have is also really small. It's a really small base. The number of listed companies that we have is really small. Their contribution to GDP, of course, that's a different debate. But there's so many things like that going on as well. So I just found the whole like, oh, stock market, achhi ja rahi hai, buri ja rahi hai debate, like the whole narrative. I found that so disingenuous to the whole thing. And it's a very, see, again, this is a way of financial literacy is mulk mein hai nahi. You talk to someone and they go like, देखो economy का कितना बुरा हाल है, देखो stock market आजकल कितनी गिरी हुई है. But maybe at that time exports are at a record high. Maybe at that time हमारी exchange rate is not overvalued. Maybe at that time everything is pretty good in terms of what we're doing. So things like that as well. I mean, there's so many factors that come into play into the economy, and just summarizing that with just an economic indicator, जो probably सट्टे पे चलता है, is very unfair.
Yeah. Allegedly, big banners.
I'll give you an example. The largest volumes ever witnessed by the stock exchange were last year when in World Call.
Okay.
All right. Huge volumes. And itne huge the कि Asad Umar tweeted about, wow, such a great day for the stock exchange, greatest volumes. But वो volumes इसलिए थे क्योंकि कोई World Call खरीदने के लिए, acquisition के लिए shares खरीद रहा था. That is not because
that's not even regular trading.
It's not because the market was up or everything was great in the market and every like sector was green. It was more to do with a guy was out there trying to buy a company, right? So uski demand dekh ke aur log, it was, and allegedly it was a pump and dump. I've written about it, just by the way. I can't say who it is because
sure, Pakistan.
Yeah. But things like that, right? And that's why I feel really strongly about it. But then again, मुझसे ज़्यादा ना अब लोग ये बोलते हैं. I mean, I meet someone, and the first thing that I stock market's not.
When is your influencer phase coming, where this is like merch पे लिखा होगा, bro, PSX?
मैं बहुत दिनों से सोच रही हूँ कि मैं ये merch करूँ. Like I'm actually thinking of doing it, but I'm really lazy.
Okay.
So that's the problem. So the only problem is me being lazy. My concern is, would people want to buy it? I mean, who would want to buy it?
Bro, Twitter finance, bro, niche जो है, like maybe like 100-200 बंदा तो निकल ही आएगा, and then उनको देख के उनके followers तो हजारों में होंगे. आप जाए, I think modifiers.pk पे बन जाएगा.
My point is, if someone came out with this shirt, would I buy it?
देखो ऐसी बातें ना सोचो. How do you make money? That's it.
Okay,
Ethics
so
with
today I'm announcing on this platform, I'm announcing that I am coming out. The stock market is not an indicator of the economy.
3-4 लोग शायद देख लेंगे.
We're coming out with t-shirts, mugs,
keychains,
notebooks,
NFTs,
caps,
NFTs,
make stock market great again.
But अच्छा, चलो final बात. काफी टाइम मैंने ले लिया तुम्हारा. असद उमर ने ये बात कही, ठीक है. Now my big thing with regards to why I'm talking to journalists वगैरह is कि if there's so much misinformation in Pakistan, there's like a culture of misinformation, conscious, unconscious, facts के बगैर बातें होना. असद उमर saying such a thing, मतलब ये कोई तो बहुत obvious बात है ना कि somebody is one individual is buying a huge volume of shares and आपको obviously पता होना चाहिए कि this is not indicative of market sentiment. असद उमर कोई जाहिल भी नहीं है. तो like and then there is all the stuff. How do you feel about our mainstream news channels with regards to their relationship with reality?
I'll tell you what I think about mainstream news channels. They're absolutely terrible at disseminating financial information. And I'll give you an example. A few years ago, damn fund ke paise, like essentially what happens is damn fund ke jo paise hote hain, koi fund ke jo paise hote hain, governments don't keep the money as cash.
Yeah.
They invest it in fixed income,
Okay.
Like for instance, T-bills खरीद लेते हैं, PIBs खरीद लेते हैं, depending on how long the tenure is. Usually T-bills खरीदते हैं because treasury bills are shorter. So if you ever need it, it's easier to liquidate. So a prime time news anchor at that time went on to do a show about how the damn fund money is being used to pay utility bills. Because she thought T-bills is bills.
T for telephone?
And bills, telephone bill, jo bhi bill, whatever bill.
Yeah.
She just thought that they were being used to pay bills. And that is the level of discourse that the financial information in our country receives. That is the level of importance I receives. The only person I feel that does a little justice to this on TV, and when I say a little, I mean a lot of justice to this on TV, is Shahzeb Khanzada. But that is also because he started off as a financial journalist. So he's been doing this from day one, and now he's moved on to politics. So for him, and then plus he's an MBA, I think, and he's got the background as well. So the whole debate
I have to interrupt you here, side topic. Bro, Shahzeb Khanzada is like ripped. Like I saw these pictures and boy, ke full abs hai yaar. I'm like, what is happening? I cannot. This is too sideways.
I don't know when he gets the time.
I mean, because maybe gym jata hu. That shit is not easy. How is he doing this?
No, I don't go to the gym. I don't work out.
Yeah.
I don't know how anyone gets the time. So again, how does Shahzeb get the time? That is my first question.
Yeah. But shout out Shahzeb Khanzada.
Shahzeb Khanzada does a really great job at doing this. And other than that, the number of people that have like genuine grasp and debate on things like on the economy, that is very few. Like I think the whole LNG issue in the country, it had been politicized so much that you're either PMLN or you're either PTI. No, bro, like some things that they did were right, some things that they did were right. You pick and choose and you connect the two and you go like, oh, let's make a cohesive policy using both, right? But no, it's not like that. And I feel that Pakistani, like for instance, there have been so many economic pieces of news that should have taken up prime time as well during the past few weeks. But no, let's just talk about the no confidence motion in repeat, in every show throughout the day. Yeah. So that also plays a huge role in this. And I remember when I started journalism and I was really frustrated and I tweeted this when I started. And I remember only like financial journalists talk about the economy on TV. And someone was like, oh, you want your own show, that's why you're tweeting. I was like, no, man, I'm just saying if anyone's speaking about the economy, there should be people that know about it.
Yeah.
I don't want someone, coming onto TV and comparing apples to oranges and driving public narrative through it. Because when you're on TV or when you're on social media, you've got to understand that you have an influence. Like, no matter what you think, you are shaping opinions.
Yeah.
अगर मैं आज बोल दूं कि Pakistan जो exports करता है, it's costing the economy or whatever. Like let's say, and I write a full thread on it, and I manage to influence, let's say, 10 or 15 people. These 10, 15 people are going to bring it up in drawing room discussions. So you've got to realize that this is a responsibility that you have, and I feel that you're only truthful to the profession that you're in when you realize the power of the profession that you're in.
Yeah. That's a full मतलब emotional जगह पे आके जो है ना. Do you have drawing room discussions where you're arguing with
I
people?
so I'm a woman, so
This is
usually
true.
like joining discussions जब होते हैं,
You're not
so
involved.
no, people were when I was studying econ, right?
Hmm.
And even as a student, I had better understanding of economics than most
Yeah.
drawing room
Yeah.
debaters, uncles, right? And they would brush whatever I had to say off, and I'd still like हमारे घर में ये scene नहीं है. My dad would insist on debating with me, coming up with things. So regardless of however a guest would brush me off, I would still like stay at it. So at this point now, no one talks about, like in my family, like people bring it up and then I give them an answer and then they stop talking to me about it. I mean, it stopped. It started off as debating, and now at this point it's like, oh, correcting. So there's a transition that's happened. So people ask me questions, and then I go like, oh, this is a misconception. This is what's happening. So I'm at that phase. But I genuinely love drawing in discussions. My friends don't talk about the economy with me. Like, they don't.
See, the thing with wali baat hai na, that Uzair was saying, that it's not like uncles ko kuch nahi pata and they're just talking on about WhatsApp forwards. It's like everybody.
I'm not calling myself a kid, but people I studied with, right?
Yeah.
If you tell them, oh, the policy rate went up by 250 basis points, they're gonna be like, oh, how much is it right now? Or oh, so things like that, right? And these are people that have studied economics, and they're not really concerned because the nature of their work, they work they work in the marketing department at some FMCG. They don't really care. So
dismissive vibes are your marketing department ke baare.
I mean, no offense. I genuinely do like the whole. I generally do like the profession. I had applied to the profession as well. But my point is that they don't need to be connected to economic news. So the reason they're disconnected is by choice, because they don't need to be connected to work. So they're not connected for their own self as well. In fact, last week I was talking to a few friends and they asked one of my friends and they're like, oh, you probably read everything she writes. And my friend was like, I haven't read a single story.
Okay.
So yeah. They like everyththing I share, but they don't read my stuff.
Yeah. They go support le lo, but like ek had tak.
But my point is, the people that come from privileged backgrounds, these are people that went to privileged, education institutes. These are people that had education and literacy and information at their disposal. And the reason why they're not reading stuff and they're not engaging on this stuff is their own choice. That's not a blame on you or me. These people can, but they don't. Yes, this is one segment. And then there's one segment that can't because they don't have the tools.
Yeah.
So these two combined form up a huge part of our population.
And this this is without discussing. This is not without discussing the people who do have an interest and access, but are living off incorrect information as well.
Yes, there are lots of people like that as well. Like there's lots of people that are really like I'll give you an example. Like my dad, right? He's really interested in all this stuff.
Yeah.
He's really interested in politics. All right. So more than the economy, he's really interested in politics.
Yeah.
Yeah, he gets a lot of information from WhatsApp. He gets a lot of information from talk shows, which are skewed at best. And the information he doesn't get facts.
Yeah.
He gets opinionated facts sometimes.
Yeah.
Opinions. He doesn't get facts, right? And he's really interested, but वो misinformation की तरफ चला जाता है. And then he brings up news to me and I go like fake. But he goes like, "तुम्हें तो सब चीज़ ही fake लगती है."
Yeah.
But things like that. And now he's gotten better. Now he knows what is real, what is fake, and things have improved on that front as well. And I got really angry one day. I was like, "Papa, आप forward मत क्या करें? लोग बोलेंगे बेटी कुछ journalist है, Papa fake news forward कर रहे हैं." So that happened, but it's really nice to see that people are taking interest as well. Like again, social media and these things have made information more accessible.
Would you be
My
interested
dad wants to cross-check something.
Would you be
He
interested in
Googles
the Ariba Shahid show on primetime TV?
on politics.
Oh, finance, economics, whatever.
Finance, sure.
Huh.
Politics, no, not really.
Pakistan, it's hard to separate the two.
Yeah, no, I political economy is really strong. Say
Hmm.
political economy, and political economy does have interest.
Yeah.
Um, but then again, आप हर रोज कितना बात करेंगे ITPs and gas crisis and uh, reserves dwindling or
Yes.
monetary policy. आप हर रोज कितना बात करोगे? So the daily show is really impossible. I would put that up at 11 p.m. every night so that people could go to sleep well.
Acha.
You can't have this. You can't have the show every day.
Okay, but a weekly show last week tonight with you.
Maybe.
I don't know, bro. मुझे possible लग रहा है. I mean, just put it out there, manifest.
मेरी उर्दू इतनी अच्छी नहीं है.
That's fine.
मेरी उर्दू अच्छी है.
हम लोगों को इंग्लिश सिखा देंगे.
But I borderline थोड़ा सा, like the last I made a video of a prophet in Urdu. उसमें लिखा हुआ है आप बिलावल की बहन है. And I genuinely do feel कि कभी कभार मैं लगती हूँ बिलावल की बहन. मेरी उर्दू कोई बुरी नहीं है. It's just pronunciation अच्छी नहीं है.
Right. Well,
pronunciation बेहतर हो सकती है. I don't sound like the Urdu speaking I am.
हाँ. Dawn news चलें, कोई बात नहीं. there is scope. अच्छा, before we go, है कोई जिन story?
So मुझे जिनों से बहुत डर लगता है. मुझे बहुत डर लगता है.
It would be weird if it was the opposite. कि bro, मेरा तो good scene है.
नहीं मुझे बहुत डर लगता है. I get really creeped out but I'll give you I've never really seen a jinn or
that's normal.
Like मैं बहुत आयतुल कुर्सी पढ़ती हूँ. जहाँ मुझे डर लगता है मैं आयतुल कुर्सी पढ़ती हूँ. And that is my protection. But I'll give you a story. This is back when I was in my O-levels and I'm studying Islamia at 2 a.m. And I'm a good kid and my computer table पे पढ़ रही हूँ. And this is like, I didn't have a laptop back then. It's like, no, LCD वाले computers जो होते थे. Computer table है. I have a past paper opened up and I'm writing stuff. And this table is kind of like China की table थी.
Okay.
तो रात के 2 बजे ना table हिल रही है. सही है. And आवाजें भी आ रही है table हिलने की. And I look around. All right. And you know, I'm so freaked out at that moment. I couldn't see anything else moving. I could only see the table.
Yeah.
I could only see the table moving. And I'm so freaked out. I'm like, shit, man, this jinn is shaking the table.
Yeah. Islam ke khilaf hai jinn.
The jinn is like, get out, right?
Yeah.
And then I don't know what to do. And then also, since I've always been a really scared kid. कि रात को I'd wake my parents up and go like, oh, मुझे डर लग रहा है. तो मुझे बहुत डांट पड़ी हुई है इस बात पे. किस बात का डर लग रहा है?
Yeah.
कोई नहीं. तो and I also I'm in my O-levels and I want to be taken seriously. Like I'm a teenager now. So what I do is I go like, I can't wake my parents up and tell them that the table is shaking because like by the time they'll come, the jinn will stop. So what I do is I go into my parents' room. I take my chadar and सो जाती हूँ. चादर सर पे टंगी and that's it. In the morning, my parents wake up, and then my mom and my dad are like, "Why?"
Yeah.
Why? And also important to note, Zalzala aaya tha. It was not a jinn.
Acha.
Just putting that out there.
Yeah.
You did not know Zalzala aaya tha Karachi. I could not see anything else shaking. I just focused on the table. The next thing is, this is when I woke up in the morning. My parents did not ask me why I was sleeping on the floor, because that is the day the Americans found Osama bin Laden.
Oh shit.
So for a while they completely forgot.
They're like, acha, we'll come to you.
They're watching the news, right? And I wake up to the news of Osama bin Laden call, right? And I was like, oh, acha. So then my mom was like, why were you? And I was like, मम्मा वो रात को ना वो जिन आ गया था और वो टेबल हिला रहा था और मुझे डर लगा तो मैं आयतुल कुर्सी पर सो गई. My parents start laughing and then they go like, Ariba, it's an earthquake. And it's really good that they told me it's an earthquake, because otherwise, मुझे तो बुखार चढ़ जाता.
Yeah. And
another Jinn story of me मुझे actually बुखार चढ़ना.
okay, 2 in 1.
So I went, and I remember this now, even though you told me to think of one. I remember this now. I went to Lahore. I went to Shah Jahan and Noor Jehan ka maqbara. So when I went to Shah Jahan ka maqbara, Noor Jehan ka maqbara. Noor Jehan ke maqbare mein kya hua ki the tour guide was like, "Hi, how about I take you around and you give me 200 rupees?" And I was like, "You know what? Sure." Kya ho gaya? So the guy showed us upar ka floor ye wo, told us that Noor Jahan is buried with her daughter, and she loved her daughter, and Noor Jahan was like Shah Jahan's favorite wife. And I'm like, okay. And then later on, he takes us to like outside the maqbara, like outside the building. There's a trap door. He unlocks the trap door. He opens the trap door. And he's like, "Chale andar." And I'm like, "What?" And at this point, I'm like, you know what? He's gonna go down there. He's gonna mug me.
Yeah.
And I'm with a friend of mine, and she's like, chalo. And I'm like, no. She's like, chalo, tum aage chalo, piche aa rahe. And I'm like, no. But eventually, somehow, I do get convinced to do this, and this is me on my first solo trip, like without my parents, right? So trying to be adventurous too, right? So I go down the stairs, and there's a passage which is a little above my head. So it's for short people. And the tour guide's aage, me, and then my friend. And then we enter into a room. Jahan pe ab chhat upar ho jati hai. We enter into a room, and he goes like, "Dekhen, Noor Jahan jab mari thi na, to usko, since she's Noor Jahan, they did not want to bury her in the ground. So they hung her casket from the roof of this room. And there is no casket there. So thoda sa but at this point, I'm like, chale. Even still, right? Then he was like, "Hey, Noor Jahan ki cover." Cover. And I'm just like, mujhe yahan se jana hai. But the guy story there. In the meanwhile, I see something move.
Oh.
I scream and I run out.
Oh, nice.
I scream, I run out.
Yeah.
And it's a bat. But I scream and I run out, and I'm out and I'm shaking. I'm shaking. And
yeah.
There's no Jinn. It was a bat and a cover in a dark room.
Yeah.
Which is probably haunted.
I mean,
and this is the first time I'm seeing the cover up front.
Right.
Like
life.
It's all like paved, so you can't see the dirt, right? It's paved. Cover ke upar pavement kar diya. Like puri zameen barabar hai. But the guy told us the story of how her casket was hung from the roof, but Ranjit Singh came in and was like, "Oh, gold ka casket hai? Chalo." They took the body out, they took the gold, and they left with the gold, and they buried her in the ground as a form of disrespect. And I'm like, hum itne saalon se disrespect ho rahe hain kya? But yeah, that is my not Jinn story, but another story of how Ariba is a scaredy cat.
I mean, at this point, agar Jinn aa jata, to it would not have been surprising, given the mahal. It would like,
I'm pretty sure it was there.
Yeah. Wo tour guide, chayad, who knows? But where should people find you? Do you want people to find you on the internet? I think you can't avoid being found on the internet, but Twitter.
No, if you want to find me on the internet, you can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm trying to work on my Instagram, but mujhse Instagram hota nahi hai. I'm not really good at it. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. But yeah, my Twitter is really accessible. And if you ever have any questions, if you ever have any story ideas, or if you ever need any like clarification or whatever, I'd be happy to help. I'd like to believe that I'm approachable. If I'm not, just let me know. But yeah,
it'll be great. Somebody messages just this: "You are not approachable." Okay, Khuda Hafiz. All right, I think this was good. Anything important you wanted to say that I didn't ask?
No, not really. Other than maybe the fact that I had 2 legal notices, one for like 10 billion and one for 5 billion.
Now you tell me this. I'll tell her. She'll come back. We'll try and get her back. Okay. Thank you very much, Ariba.
But yeah, the legal notices are like nothing happens, and I can't really talk about them.
Oh, right. Chalo.
Yeah.
दिलासा दे दिया थोड़ा सा. All right.
Hope that.
ठीक
All
है.
right. Bye
Guys,
bye.
thank you for watching.